you and Happy New Year, everybody. Hope everybody had a lovely, lovely, lovely holiday.
We did. Many happy returns to you.
I heard your sigh, and I'm sure you heard the audience when President Mahama spoke.
Yes, and that's the interesting part. He chose nowhere else but the Volta region to say this. Why was it important to him that this is said at this time?
Well, you see, we are all joy. You understand? In as much as there's a keen contest and there's a campaign going on, we are also trying very hard to meet everybody halfway. First and foremost, it is important from Mr. Mahama to actually measure expectations, not to provide ample opportunity for people to have very huge expectations. Look, currently, Ghana's debt stock stands at 570 billion. You understand? That's about 57 billion United States dollars. It's a humongous amount of money. We owe our external debtors, we owe our internal debtors, and we've all heard about the haircuts and pensions and our inability to repay our pensioners for the investments that they've made with the government and people of Ghana. We know how low treasury bill rates are currently, even for the ordinary citizen who invests in their treasury, bills. So yes, it's a very, very gloomy situation currently, especially regarding the economy and the state of it. You and I both know that Mr. Mahama is one of those very sincere individuals. He's unable to mask it or create an impression, and he doesn't want to pretend. He also knows that the biggest challenge would normally be how to satisfy and keep peace with our labor unions. You know how robust they can be. Indeed, even when we were in office at the time, if you remember, a lot of the challenges that we faced were largely from labor unions, nursing teacher associations, teachers associations, name it, across the length and the breadth of the country. I remember even private transport unions, and how they held the Ministry of Transportation hostage because at some point they wanted to increase fares, and the ministry was trying very hard to reduce this huge imposition of more pressure on the citizens. So there's always been these conversations. Look, I'm sure Mr. Mahama is in no cahoots about what is going on. I'm sure he appreciates the fact that there will certainly be very serious challenges when we come into office. I have heard a few people who have even said that they worry about the next administration and wonder how they're going to cope. I think that is just a type of manipulative blackmail of sorts, because certainly if government does not change, then I'm sure that these things will continue for the next how many years. At least a new change will also create a certain hope, a certain anticipation, an opportunity for people to watch how things can be done and done differently. I have no doubt in my mind, and I'm sure many of the people who listen to Mr. Mahama will agree with him, that there are very, very, very deep challenges with the economy, first and foremost. The sooner the government takes over, they will have to investigate, they will have to audit. Because remember, until President Akufo-Addo and Mr. Mahmoud Bawumia leave office, we will never see the length of the snake. Because right now, there's still quite a lot that they are hiding. You remember when the negotiations with the IMF started, for example, they had to be compelled literally by threats of withholding the monies before they presented the full books even to the eyes of the IMF. This is the situation that we have. We've heard the minority leaders, the minority in parliament many times criticize government for lack of transparency and lack of accountability. We've seen the Auditor General's report year on year out, and this time the losses stand at over 15 billion Ghana cedis. Some they say they can recover, others they are not even sure that they can recover because some of the institutions are even unable to fully account for where those losses have come from. This is the challenge we have. All of our governance institutions have literally been politicized, overly politicized. Indeed, we've heard about the SML and the challenges to do with the contracts of that kind that nobody even knew about. Even the Ghana Revenue Authority knew very little about this so-called risk assurance company receiving huge sums of money, almost $24 million in payment on behalf of the good people of Ghana. My brother, can you imagine what that kind of money can do for the labor unions, for the many rural poor, for infrastructure, for the hardships, and for hunger. Why should we be creating all these bureaucracies as a way of siphoning what little money is left? The buck stops to President Akufo-Addo and, of course, his Vice President, Mr. Mahmoud Bawumia. What they need to be doing now is to be telling the good people of Ghana how they have expended and wasted, plundered and stolen all of our money after they promised to protect the public purse. Look at the number of family and friends who are operating in this administration. Look at the huge amount of government expenditure alone. And President Mahama spoke even to government expenditure and how he will work very hard to reduce government expenditure. Indeed, what are they doing with all these monies at that Jubilee House? How are they spending these monies? And on what? Look at the number of staff that the GRA alone has. Look at the number of officers, outlets that the GRA alone has. Look at the number of individuals working in that outfit. Why do you need a risk assurance to support the efforts of GRA? Indeed, GRA even says that they don't recall that publication about this intervention even saving them that 300 million that was announced at some point. You see, look, we have a certain level of criminality that is going on. It is pervasive. It is a canker that is eating at everything that is good for Ghana. My brothers and sisters, President Mahama did not speak out of turn. He's been very, very sincere. I'm sure you remember the challenges to do with single spine when President Mills came into office a few years ago. Difficult as it was, he engaged the security services, he had conversations with the labor unions. Eventually, it took off with a lot of challenges, but everybody was satisfied at some point. There is no way that the new administration can do it without the support of these unions. I know that some of them were used for a lot of politics. Some of them became very, very political. But I know that presently a lot of them are very dissatisfied with the performance of this government, starting from the PUC of Ghana. That is the apex body for labor unions in Ghana. So I know. I myself worked for a long time with the Maritime and Dock Workers Union. I know the challenges that they are facing. I know about the challenges to do with the University Teachers Association of Ghana and, of course, the Ghana National Association of Teachers. Many of these institutions are facing very, very serious challenges. Look at even the Fair Wages Commission. When was the last time you heard that they were able to meet the demands from the unions? So, yes, there are all these challenges. There's a rumor that government is intending even to increase salaries because they are trying very hard to create some peace as we go into the election. Look, this government has run on enormous propaganda, on enormous deception, on enormous, misleading and misrepresentation, on many things that most governments would never even dream of doing. I believe that one of the things that President Mahama suffered from was that he always wanted to be very honest to the good people of Ghana, to tell it as it is, to expose whatever was wrong and whatever was going on, to tell us all the challenges that we're all facing, and even the effort that he was making. I remember when we had all these challenges with our power distribution, all of that. What did he do? He struggled to explain, spent all the time calling for the good people of Ghana to give him support. He got very little, even from the largest opposition at the time, struggling to come into office. Nobody made an effort to support him. And eventually he found a solution through these independent power producers. In the past, how did other administrations deal with them so, or the power supply challenges? We saw pastors praying at Akosombo, for example. We saw the Bui Dam that was constructed at huge cost and how it has never been able to support the national grid. Indeed, we also saw the imports of all these funny equipment that came in that were never used. In fact, those people who imported those items, in the voice of Mr. Weko Bobby, should even have been charged for causing financial loss to the state. This is what we had before Mr. Mahama decided to go all out and progressively seek a solution outside of our dependence on the natural rainfalls and patterns. Do you see the callers now about the levels of water in Akosombo Dam? We've all moved on from that. And I believe that this is what we are looking for. A leader who is progressive. A leader whose vision transcends the ordinary and transcends the myopic visions that we have. A leader who will think outside the box. Who would also reach out to the good people of Ghana. One, ask for their support, ask for their help. Look, we have a lot of experts out there. Mr. Mahama was only reaching out to all the unions that we have, especially labor, knowing very well that this hardship is going to deepen, that the inflation rates might even worsen, that the cost of living might even increase. There is enormous hardship right now. He was only speaking to what we all know. And yes, let me repeat what he said, and that he knew that the economy was in shambles. Every effort is going to be made by him to rebuild the economy. Every effort we made to support each endeavor, but we cannot do that without the support of the good people of Ghana. And Labour really, beyond Parliament, is a reflection of the workforce of this country.
Clearly, you do understand where Labour finds itself currently, the average Ghanaian. So if you're asking for this sacrifice, what would the former president be offering in return? How would the former president show by example and by leadership that this is not only a sacrifice I'm asking of you, I am also doing something?
First and foremost, we've all come to realize and recognize the modesty of Mr. Mahama as an individual first and foremost. He leads by example. I'm sure Mr. Mahama has also reiterated the point that he will run a very, very slim government. Indeed, even some people within our own ranks and file have actually questioned whether or not it is feasible, considering the number of opportunities that exist. But all of us will hold Mr. Mahama to account to ensure that we run a very, very slim administration, a very, very, very unique administration where we're not going to be wasting public resources. Remember the cost of batteries alone, cost of maintenance alone of government vehicles, the number of vehicles even within the possession of government. We heard recently about the number of vehicles that were procured. These are all matters that Mr. Mahama will pay very keen attention to. Indeed, he himself, except when he's traveling out of Accra, rarely, if ever, uses huge fuel gasoline vehicles. On an ordinary day, you'd see Mr. Mahama driving a very small Genesis or a Toyota Camry. These are the vehicles that he uses. Indeed, the Toyota Avalons are still the vehicles that are in his fleet, and these are his normal daily vehicles. And all of us in opposition, I'm sure you see all of us when we come to radio stations, you meet at the party functions and all of that. You see how modest that everybody lives in a very, very measured way. I mean, how the travel in particular is a huge expense to government. Mr. Mahama has never been known to be one to love traveling on private jets and all of that. So we know that that is a cost that we'll be cutting down. Look at this infrastructure in terms of hospitals. My brother, until you've had an emergency, you will never understand the value of these interventions. In recent times, I have come to taste what it means to have good health infrastructure. At the time when you are at that point, knocking on death's door, no hospital abroad will receive you. You cannot be evacuated even through a medvac. You would need to seek attention from these same facilities. It is therefore important for us to recognize the value of a leader who invests in our health infrastructure. I know Mr. Mahama very well. I know the things that he values. I know the things that he appreciates. So I'm certain that he will do things and do them very, very differently. If for nothing at all, take the propaganda away. Take the lies away. Today we are being told that the SML agreement should actually be audited by KPMG. Who gave Mr. Mahama the time when they started the investigations into the Ford navigation vehicle, for example? How many people gave him time? It was so politicized. In any case, what is a president in office? Really, what will he be doing with a vehicle that was actually in the public pool? One that had been received and left there. One that he himself wasn't using even personally. But this is the Ghana that we have. And this is how the people who are now in office, feeling day and night, who have now been so moped in corruption that they don't even know how to shake themselves off it. And yet they dare to tell us to allow them to continue in government. No matter what happens, I believe that the good people of Ghana know that they need a man who empathizes, a man who understands, a modest leader, a humble leader, one who will not spend their money on lavish parties, lavish travel, lavish aircraft. Look at the investments that were made in the National Cathedral, for example. As we sit here today, can you imagine what those monies could have done? Look, I travel the length and breadth of this country, with and without Mr. Mahama. I know Ghana very well. I've watched how people have gotten poorer in our rural communities. Can you imagine what it will mean to use these resources that are very scarce to provide potable water, to provide health facilities, equipment in our health facilities, adequate salaries for the persons who man these facilities. Look, a healthy nation is a healthy people. Visit some of our health facilities and see the challenges that are there. Why do you think people are falling ill with all these kidney-related diseases? It is about diet. Most people are depending largely on carbohydrates because they can no longer afford protein. Proteins are a much healthier option. So you eat more protein and you eat less carbohydrates. But what are we doing? We are filling up on carbohydrates. And that is a challenge. So these are some of the things that we need to look at and take a very close look at. My brother, do you know what over $50 million can do to our road infrastructure? We were told that we didn't eat roads. The people who say we didn't eat roads are now trying to use roads to manipulate and blackmail us, to force us to see them as not the stealers that they are. This is the government that we have in place. My brother, ever since Mr. Mahmoud Bawumia became flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, have you heard him delivering any lectures? Have you heard him justifying all the lies that he told and for which Ghanaians voted into office? Have you heard them repeat any of those stories that he was telling before? The lies about where the monies were, about arresting the dollar, about improving the city, about moving from taxation basically to all of that. What are we living with? Go and buy a packet of papaya and look at the number of taxes on that sheet. My colleague asked me recently, why are you still paying a COVID tax? She lives in England. There many people died from COVID. They didn't pay a COVID levy. Why are we still paying that levy? And today we are now being asked to do it. Domestic users will now be paying with VAT and electricity. All these things, I believe, were even an effort to undermine the 24-hour economy, which is actually proposing also cheaper electricity, because this is one of the main things that industry is complaining about. And then you come and impose VAT on electricity after telling us that we had excess of power that we didn't need. But then we had excess of power that we were even exporting and receiving money. My brother, if Mr. Mahama had not conceived of the idea of Actu Abuga, where would we be today? If he had not conceived of the idea of the independent power producers, where would we be today? The government indeed does not have money. When the assembly plants decided to threaten to close down, where did they find the 30 million to pay them? You understand? So these are all efforts government is making to cripple and undermine every citizen of Ghana. Why do you elect a person into office and you now come and run roughshod over you? Very intolerant, listens to nothing, refuses to accept criticism, and literally, it's basically, I think, insulting the intelligence of each and every Ghanaian and actually living to tell the story. Look, Mr. Akufo-Addo checked out a long time ago. I'm not sure what the Vice President intends to tell us, but if there's anything to go by, his work as chair of the Economic Management Team is within itself telling. The failure and the abysmal performance of the so-called better managers of our economy. Where are all those great minds that they thought they had? They boosted and bragged, heaved and sighed. Do you remember the finance minister then in the position, sharing those leaflets on the streets of Ghana, hitting his chest about being the one single individual to lead a private bank and lead it successfully? Today we have handed in the role of Ghana's economy. How has he fared? Failed abysmally, refused even to do the needful, has refused to be dignified even in office, to admit his mistakes and resign honorably. He has refused and continues to remain in that office, doing absolutely nothing but creating all these opportunities for people to siphon the scarce resources that we have. That is a testament of the failings of this administration. And you look, it is not lost on anybody. All the labor unions know what has gone on. If we save on expensive travel, if we save in the number of trips that ministers and government appointees are taking, look, go out there and check the number of trips they make in every given day or week or month. After we're told that most of the travel was going to be reduced and that they will only be doing necessary travel. Where is the necessary travel? Our debt stock today is at 570 billion, a colossal figure. $57 billion, if you ask me. And that is even in conservative terms. We don't know what else has not been made available to the public. My brother, this is the Ghana we have.
I guess you'll find out a lot once you walk into office. But let me conclude on this note. For a lot of people, campaigns are used to engender hope. So the focus usually is on what you will do. People will find out what you will not do when you come into office. So there are some people who feel this may not be the right time for him to have said something of this nature. The very first time you're talking to Labour, you're talking about what you will not do. Why not focus on what you will do so you engender hope? But what do you say to those people?
You know, in every conversation, there's always two sides of the coin. There will always be various schools of thought, and there are also very different perspectives. In all humility and in all due deference, I'm sure that normally before we go into these environments, what we do is that we scan the environment. We receive consent from the ground about what it is that the people are very, very interested in, if you know what I mean. Certainly, there are many questions that people within the labor force are interested in. This is a region that was promised a port that has never been delivered, and yet they have a chief executive who draws the government salary. Do you understand? This is a region that was promised better roads and better infrastructure. They have received absolutely nothing. This is a region where many people grapple with the ordinary problems that all Ghanaians grapple with: lack of jobs and underemployment. This is also the home that the NDC calls its biggest support base here in Ghana. So naturally, there will be questions that border on matters to do with the relationship between a future government and labor unions. And everybody knows that without the requisite support from labor unions, it will be difficult for you to run this country. Mr. Mahama is just making a plea in his usual very humble and, very, very supportive approach. All he was asking was that, look, I am not only campaigning for the NDC, I'm not only campaigning to become a leader of this country or to form the next government, I am also asking that the good people of Ghana would offer me their support. So where is the best place to ask for that support from? The support will come from the labor union, the workers of Ghana. They are the biggest constituency, and they are apolitical because there's NPP, there's NDC, there's also other political affiliations within that labor force. So all Mr. Mahama was actually asking is just trying to rally support from the worker and labor union. Please give me your support. It's like saying, kindly vote for me. When you do, I will run a very transparent administration. I will be very accountable. I will let you visit the books and see just where we are. I will let you be a part of this journey to build the Ghana that all of us want together. I think that is the impassioned plea that Mr. Mahama was making. And I think we should see it within that context, because that is all that he was trying to say and put out there to the general public. I've heard the response from the president of UTAG. I mean, like I said, opinions are like onions. So we've heard his opinion, we've heard his perspective, and many others. But we all know that this is all that Mr. Mahama was saying. And he went on to speak about the challenges with the economy. He spoke about the challenges to do with all the sectors that we have. Look, the national health insurance. It is what serves all of our people who do not have private insurance. How is that one fair? I have had workers who have gone for very critical interventions and they were unable to get anything from the national health insurance. They were left at the mercy of people who could step in to help them. People go and looking for blood transfusions. They don't have any support unless they can get 2 or 3 people who replace the blood that they are given. This is the reality on the ground. I know about the issues to do with the dialysis unit, for example. Imagine that government could use some of these resources that are being wasted to invest in some of these things. So these are the conversations that Mr. Mahama is having. And when you talk about hope, Mr. Mahama has spoken about running a very lean government. He has spoken about reducing the cost and expenditure of government. He has also spoken about working on specifically the constitution review process. As a matter of fact, it is something that Ghanaians themselves have asked for. Because now we have a president who runs roughshod, always fighting with the constitution. A man who in the past was actually held out as a man who believed in the rule of law, a former attorney general, a former foreign minister. And he is currently president. And literally runs roughshod of the constitution, overly populating all of our courts, working very hard to politicize all of the government institutions and agencies. Everybody today in every government is a politician. Why would you be instituting an investigation into a matter to do with GRA? And the head of GRA, the man in charge, the man who owes the good people of Ghana a fiduciary responsibility for the work that he has been given, the salary that he received, and he takes a leave of absence. Not a health leave, not because of an emergency, but because he is entitled to leave. How can we trust to leave our country in the hands of Mr. Akufo-Addo and his Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. They have totally failed. In terms of hope, Mr. Mahama continues to assure the good people of Ghana that he will work in the interest of Ghanaians, that he will put his presidency on the table for everybody to participate in actively. He will be running a government for the people, by the people. He has spoken about the constitutional review process, specifically to do with Article 71 in particular, using himself as an example. He has spoken about running a leading government, for example. He has spoken about working with the right caliber of people to ensure that we build back this economy. Thirdly, he has also promised to improve largely on our infrastructure. It is something that he started and did not finish. So we will continue to build largely on our infrastructure. We also need to work very hard to remember that in all the journeys that Mr. Mahama has been making, he's been speaking also to an acceleration of our industries, to revamp. And look, there were many of these industries that Mr. Mahama left behind. The rice mill in Tamale, for example, has been left to rot. Do you know that the Dipe Share processing factory currently is not working? There has been a very systematic effort to downplay and destroy all the industries that were left by Mr. Mahama and the NDC. He has promised to go step by step to each of these districts, each of these regional capitals, wherever there was such an industry that was abandoned. He will work very hard to revamp it. Why do you think unemployment is where it is? It's because every effort was made to sabotage a lot of these interventions that were left. He has promised to complete all the outstanding infrastructure projects, largely to serve the interests of the good people of Ghana. Look, the biggest threat to our democracy today is unemployment, my brother. And I'm sure you know it. All of us have our children, nieces and nephews. Person is very close to us, well qualified. Look, the average Ghanaian young person today has at least one master's degree, a no job, or has never held down a job. These are the things that Mr. Mahama speaks to. And the only way we can improve upon our environment, to improve upon jobs and access, is that we create what? A level playing field.
Okay.
Why have all our state institutions become so political? All of them singing from the same hymn. Why should this continue? Ghanaians themselves are aware of what is going on. The taps have stopped running. The power is very, 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 almost impossible to get. Industries are already burdened by high taxes. And now you come and slap on even more bills. How did Mr. Akufo-Addo become popular? It was through what? Rallying support against the introduction of unity under President John Mahama. History is replete with his conversations then, with his loud speeches then. How has he fared since he's been in office? When have you heard any apology or any humility from President Akufo-Addo or from his Vice President Mahmoud Bawumia?
Madam Mogtari, we have to leave it here.
Let me state something before we conclude. That I want to send a caution to spouses of our leaders. That the reason why we accord them respect is because they are married to persons who emerge as leaders in this country. It goes to all of us who are young people, who are middle-level people, who are in this country. That we should remember that there's a certain decorum, a certain respectability that we accord those officers. We've had many first and second ladies. Mrs. Rawlings, we've had Mrs. Emisaka, we've had Mrs. Lodina Mahama, we've had the late Mrs. Kofo, we've had Madame Nada Mills, and many others. Madame Fulera, Limad, there are quite a number of them who are also in our midst. Look at the way they comport themselves with decorum and respect. We expect nothing more. Because if we realize that spouses want to become, because they believe that we will not attack them as they do on public platforms, we are sending a caution to every spouse of our leader. Emulate the many examples that exist. Auntie Lodina is a fantastic example. She will support all her husband's endeavors, but she never carries the matter to any other person or their business. But she will work very hard for her husband, she will work very hard for her family, for the NDC, and for the wider good. And that's the philanthropy in peace and in all kindness, believing that God is a giver of all that we have. That is the example that I want to leave with all of us as we go along. And this campaign If we're going to work and respect one another, the earlier we start, the better.
Thank you. Thank you. I wish you the best of the day. That's Mrs. Joyce Bawa Mogtari, who is aide to former President John Dramani Mahama, speaking to us. And